10 years of iPhone is not just 10 years of iPhone, but also a decade for the modern smartphone. At this point, younger generations have no clue just how much smartphones changed after 2007. Navigation buttons and keyboards were killed in favor of slimmer designs and multi-touch controls, and that was the primary first step into how everything has evolved until today. About the only problem is that hardware grew stale. The game transformed into more of a war of ecosystems. Every other iPhone after the first was more of an iteration. Sure, they got larger, far more powerful, and brought new features. All details we'll provide in this chart on our website. But the primary reason for the love of loyalists and the pan of power users was that if you placed an iPhone on a table, it was really hard to tell this newer iPhone apart from the older one. This is one of the main reasons why the iPhone X is so important. Never has Apple deviated from the things that made an iPhone so much. This is really the first time that visual iteration makes a jump to visual innovation. In Tim Cook's words,
"The future of the smartphone."
But the question is if this first step is good enough to define how the future of smartphones should be. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocketnow, and this is our iPhone X review brought to you by dbrand. If I could describe the iPhone X in a word, I think that different would suit it best. I spent the first week trying to press a home button that no longer existed, and that every smartphone has these days. The radius curves now extend to the display, which has now shrunk the bezels almost entirely. The stainless steel trim and the glass are now shaped to evoke seamless integration between each other, and I'm glad I chose space gray as it lends to a darker tint in the overall finish. In the hand, this phone feels heavier than it looks, and also feels smaller than it looks as well. My problems with the design are obviously that the glass is a fingerprint magnet, which is where I'd recommend that you use a dbrand skin as a solution. I'm also not a fan of this camera hump that has become quite the lint magnet given the sharp borders. It almost makes it seem like if this phone was designed to be used with a case, and where leather is so far one of my favorite alternatives. If you came here to hear complaints about the notch, you've come to the wrong place. Sure, it looks like a mole if you're watching a video in full screen, but I'd prefer the notch any day in a smaller form factor over the last 10 years of huge bezels. See, what makes the iPhone X special is that it's nearly all display. This 5.8-inch OLED panel is the most dense that Apple has ever provided. It's also vibrant and accurate, and the minuscule black bezel along with the stereo speakers lend to a very immersive experience consuming content.
Note 8 blends gorgeous design within everything.
And then tucked inside we have almost the same specifications of the iPhone 8 Plus, meaning yes, this phone is very powerful. We have the same A11 Bionic chip with 3 gigs of RAM, and my unit is of 64 gigs of storage. There's IP67 water and dust resistance, Qi wireless charging, Bluetooth 5, and about everything else you'd ask from a flagship except for the headphone jack, which I feel that we should just give up on when it comes to Apple. iOS 11 on the iPhone X has proven to be a very interesting transition. There are still old elements like the forgettable grid of icons, you can still swipe to the left from the launcher for widgets, you can still use 3D Touch for contextual menus, even if these are still inconsistent. The death of the home button brings some benefits and some odd choices for design. I love swiping up to get home from any app, as it feels like if you're throwing the application back in the launcher. Makes sense. I love switching applications with a simple swipe to the left or right, even if the right app switching is not always available or only lasts for a few seconds. Oh, and to call other applications, make a flipped L, which is quicker than swiping up and holding. At first this learning curve was a pain, but after a week I found a lot of common sense in it. Even the shiny home button indicator is a cool addition, which can even lead to some smiley faces depending on which app you're using. The things I don't like are the weird choices, like having the home button icon flip around if you're watching a video, which can lead to a ton of confusion. Or the status icons at the top, which don't seem aligned, waste space, and don't show all the information you want. And whoever came up with this idea of swiping from the top left for notifications and the top right for control center, like seriously. And then the app status continues to get better as I've noticed more services adapting to the iPhone X screen real estate, but essentials like Google are still lagging behind in a few applications like Inbox, which I care about a lot. Overall, I guess the best way to describe the software experience is that it's still a work in progress. And yes, I do have to agree, this is the longest I've ever tested a phone, now clocking nearly 6 weeks in New York City, Honduras, Hawaii, California, New Orleans, you name it. This season has just been too crazy. So far, I'm not much of a fan of using this phone for calls, as they aren't as loud as I'm used to with iPhones, and I've even noticed the odd interference from the earpiece in certain areas, though they work just fine over the speaker. Face ID is one of those things I never thought I'd get used to, but I have. I love how you can get notifications to only show the content once the phone has unlocked, and I also love that Face ID even works from a minor angle. Those animojis are sadly not something I ever used again after my honeymoon period, but I'm sure they're fun to use at least for some of you. Things I do use every now and then are ARKit applications. I love how they provide added conveniences in being able to measure things, or test products with ease. This is one of those features that I feel is pointing in the right direction, along with just how well this phone performs. Whether it's gliding through menus or playing games, the experience is extremely fluid. I just wish my experience with battery life was just as good, but sadly it's not. Our own Anton D. Naj has achieved full days on a charge without a problem, but my unit sadly scratches a day of use, and I think it has everything to do with the fact that this phone is sporting an Intel modem and not a Qualcomm modem, as users have been able to verify. And then there's the camera. iPhones are usually devices you can trust for all auto photography, and the iPhone X is almost at the top of the food chain, second only to the Pixel 2 XL. Great results during the day with great saturation and detail, even if a tad overexposed in some cases. Though light photography is also top-notch, leading to some of the best photos I've shared on Instagram lately. About the only thing that I cannot recommend about this phone in any way is portrait mode. Either this phone doesn't like my natural highlights or it just has a very hard time detecting hair, or items like glass which are completely muted. Seriously, if devices like the Pixel 2 wouldn't exist, then this could probably be acceptable, but this is one beta that Apple really needs to work on. What I'm very impressed about is video. You may not get the manual controls you get from an LG V30, but the resulting clips from this phone don't make you really ask for them. Details are great, stabilization is great, and this is still one of the only devices, not just phones, capable of 4K video at 60 frames per second and 1080p slow motion video at 240 frames per second. I just wish that the selfie camera would have this same stabilization for video, but at least Apple is offering a wider crop now, making this camera good enough for vlogging. This is also the first time that I'm able to survive with entry-level storage on an iPhone. Apple's support for HEVC makes both photo and video storage a breeze, and I love how applications I don't use are offloaded until I need them. Overall, I'm gonna have to admit that I have more positive things to say about the iPhone X than negative. I usually never recommend first-generation Apple products, given my horrible sob stories with products like the first Apple Watch or the first Retina MacBook Pro. I thought the story would repeat itself with the iPhone X, but it really hasn't. The iPhone X may not be as revolutionary as the first iPhone in defining the basis for how a smartphone should operate, but I also cannot say that the first iPhone was as great when it launched as the iPhone X. This is definitely a great smartphone that'll turn heads no matter where you go, and that's very reliable overall. Is it worth $1,000? No. Especially when you've got almost the same internals on a different chassis with the iPhone 8 Plus. It's when you dilute the payments into installments that I do agree with my buddy David Kogan in that an extra $6 a month for all this makes the decision a little more compelling. The iPhone X may not be the best smartphone of 2017, but it is ahead of the curve in a couple of things. It is definitely the coolest iPhone ever made, and also one of the coolest phones I've used in 2017, hands down. And if you'd like to make this fingerprint magnet of an iPhone X even cooler, dbrand skins will eliminate those fingerprints and add some grip to your iPhone X, or any iPhone for that matter. Check out dbrand.com/iPhone or visit the link in the description below to customize yours. And also, be sure to chime in the comments what you think about the iPhone X and what comparisons you'd like to see next. And also hit that subscribe button to not miss out. The top card leads to our iPhone X unboxing vlog, and the bottom to our honeymoon phase with the iPhone X. You can also follow me on Twitter at Jaime_Rivera or on Instagram at Jaime Rivera. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I am Jaime Rivera. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.